Commander Rax Thorne stood at the observation deck of the Crixan flagship Eternal Victory, his four-fingered hand pressed against the transparent quantum glass. The blue marble of Earth rotated slowly below, peaceful and serene. A sight that once filled him with contempt now stirred something else entirely, something that felt suspiciously like pride. "Status report on the defensive grid, Lieutenant Cora," he called out, not turning from the view. "All systems optimal, Commander. The quantum shield array is at 100% capacity. Our patrol fleets report no anomalies in sectors 1 through 7. Rax nodded, his scaled neck reflecting the soft blue glow from Earth. 10 years ago, he would have rather eaten his own tail than admit he'd be here, commanding the greatest fleet in the Crixan Empire with one singular purpose: protecting the very species they had once sworn to subjugate. "Quite the view, isn't it?" came a gravelly voice from behind. Admiral Vex Blackclaw, his mentor and former commander during the Earth Wars, approached with measured steps. "Still having trouble sleeping?" "The dreams never quite go away," Rax admitted, finally turning to face his superior. The old admiral's battle scars had faded to a dull silver against his obsidian scales, but the memories they represented remained sharp as ever. "Remember when we thought this would be the easiest conquest in Imperial history?" Vex let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a growl. Hard to forget. Primitive bipeds with barely functional spaceflight capability, that's how intelligence described them. Biggest mistake in our 1,000-year history. "The Council of Elders still chokes on those words," Rax said, allowing himself a small smile. "Though not as much as they choked on signing the Protection Accord." "Pride comes before the fall, as the humans say. Who would have thought their sayings would become required study at the Imperial Academy?" Vex moved closer to the window, his reflection overlaying Earth's continents. "The younger ones don't understand. They see us as the noble guardians, the shield that protects humanity from the horrors of deep space. They never knew the shame of defeat." Rax's claws clicked against the deck plating as he shifted his weight. "Perhaps that's for the better. The new generation learns from our wisdom rather than our pride." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched a patrol of sleek Crixan fighters arc past, their hulls gleaming in Earth's reflected light. Each bore the new insignia, the combined symbols of Earth and the Empire, bound together in an eternal oath of protection. "To think," Vex mused, "we came to conquer them, and instead they conquered our hearts. The humans have a word for that kind of irony." "They have words for everything," Rax replied, his voice carrying both amusement and respect. "And somehow they taught us the most important word of all. Humility," they said in unison, watching as the sun peeked over Earth's horizon, casting long shadows across the ocean below. "Take us back to that day, Admiral," Rax said, bringing up the holographic display. "The Council wants a complete record for the Academy archives." Vex's eyes narrowed at the date floating in the projection. June 15th, 2157. "Ah, our day of glorious stupidity." The image shimmered, showing the first Crixan scout ship encountering a human mining operation near Mars. The humans' crude vessels looked like children's toys compared to the sleek Imperial scout ship. "We didn't even bother with standard first contact protocols," Vex continued, his voice heavy with regret. "Captain Drell just sent them our standard surrender demand, gave them 6 hours to submit to Imperial rule. And they responded with a video of someone called Bugs Bunny," Rax added, unable to suppress a chuckle. "Though we didn't understand the insult at the time." The hologram shifted, showing the massive Imperial fleet dropping out of hyperspace above Earth. 15,000 ships, each capable of reducing a continent to ash. The pride of the Crixan Empire, assembled for what they thought would be a simple show of force. "Look at that formation," Vex gestured with disgust. "Spread out for maximum visual impact rather than tactical advantage. We were so certain of our superiority that we turned our arrival into a parade." The next images made both commanders wince. Human ships, a tenth the size of Crixan vessels, slipping through the gaps in their formation. The supposedly primitive species had somehow masked their heat signatures, making them nearly invisible to Imperial sensors. "They let us get cocky," Rax noted, watching as the first wave of human ships launched what appeared to be simple nuclear missiles. "We didn't even raise our shields. Why waste energy defending against such primitive weapons?" The hologram showed the devastating result. The primitive nuclear weapons were merely shells, hiding quantum oscillation devices that phased through Crixan hull plating like it was paper. 27 capital ships lost in the first strike. "Then came their real surprise," Vex said, his scales rippling with remembered shock. The recording displayed the second wave of human attacks. Small, fast ships darting between Imperial vessels, broadcasting on all frequencies. But instead of demands or threats, they transmitted something far more devastating: human entertainment. Thousands of years of Imperial propaganda undone by human cartoons, Rax shook his head. Showing our ground troops Earth broadcasts about friendship, redemption and cooperation. Making our soldiers laugh when they should have been fighting. The Xenopsych division still studies the effects, Vex added. How do you maintain military discipline when your troops are secretly binge-watching human sitcoms? The final scene showed the Imperial fleet in disarray, ships firing at shadows, communications clogged with human media signals, and crews becoming increasingly distracted by the endless stream of Earth culture flooding their systems. 3 months, Vex said quietly. It took them just 3 months to turn our greatest strength into our greatest weakness. Our absolute certainty in our superiority became our downfall. And that was just the beginning, Rax added, watching the timestamp advance. While we were reeling from their first strikes, they were already launching Phase 2. The hologram showed human diplomats approaching defeated Crixan ships, not with demands, but with offers of medical assistance and cultural exchange. They brought not just supplies, but stories, music, and art. Conquered by kindness, Vex rumbled, the one tactical approach we had no defense against. Rax shut down the hologram, the room darkening to match his mood. The Council hated documenting this part of our history, but now it's mandatory study for every cadet. The arrogance analysis, they call it. Better to learn from our mistakes than repeat them, Vex said, moving toward the door. Though I doubt any species will underestimate humanity quite the way we did. No, Rax agreed, but that's not even the most remarkable part of the story, is it? Vex paused at the threshold. The most remarkable part was yet to come. The day they proved they were worthy of not just our respect, but our eternal protection. The holographic display flickered back to life, showing a different date, September 3rd, 2158, the Battle of Proxima Centauri. Rax's claws tightened involuntarily at the memory. Computer, load tactical display PTB 2158, Vex commanded. The room filled with a 3-dimensional representation of the battlefield. 2 massive fleets faced each other, the remaining pride of the Crixan Empire against the combined forces of humanity. We still outnumbered them 3-1, Rax noted, watching the scene unfold. Even after our initial losses, victory seemed certain. Grand Admiral Zix was so confident he broadcast his attack plan on open channels, because who would dare challenge the mighty Crixan battle doctrine? Vex's laugh carried no humour. 5,000 years of military evolution, about to be undone by a species that still watched cat videos. The hologram showed the Imperial fleet advancing in their traditional Spear of Victory formation. Hundreds of capital ships forming an arrow-shaped mass of destructive power, while smaller vessels created a defensive screen around them. Then they started broadcasting that music, Rax said, his scales shifting colours at the memory. Through the hologram came the thunderous sounds of classical human music. Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries blasted across every frequency, drowning out Imperial communications. Psychological warfare, they called it, Vex explained. But it was more than that. Hidden in the music were coded signals. Each human ship knew exactly what to do, while our commanders were stuck trying to communicate through the noise. The tactical display showed the human fleet breaking apart, seemingly in chaos. Imperial commanders celebrated, thinking their enemy was retreating in disarray. Then the trap sprung. "Look there," Rax pointed to a cluster of small ships. "The ones we thought were fleeing. They were positioning themselves in the shadow of our own electromagnetic emissions." The human vessels, nearly invisible against the background of Imperial energy signatures, launched their attack. Not with weapons, but with specialized electronic warfare pods, each one targeting a specific frequency used by Crixan ship systems. "They didn't just study our technology," Vex observed. "They understood our psychology. They knew that Imperial ships would never retreat, never break formation, even when optimal tactics called for it." The hologram showed the devastating results. Imperial ships, locked into their traditional attack patterns, found their targeting systems compromised. Their energy weapons, the pride of Crixan technology, began firing at random coordinates. But the true genius, Rax continued, was what they did next. The tactical display zoomed in on a human vessel broadcasting a new signal. Not music this time, but something far more potent, live feeds from Earth. Images of human families watching the battle, children drawing pictures of peace between their species, religious leaders praying for both sides. "They made us see them as people," Vex said quietly. "Not targets, not enemies, but beings with families and dreams and hopes, just like us." The hologram showed the moment that changed everything. A Crixan destroyer, its weapons disabled, was drifting toward a populated human station. The destroyer's captain, following Imperial doctrine, had initiated their self-destruct sequence rather than face capture. "Then Captain Morgan Blake made the call that would reshape our civilizations," Rax said, watching the scene he'd reviewed countless times. The human commander's voice filled the room. "Crixan destroyer, this is Captain Blake of the UAS Redemption. Your reactor is going critical. Let us help you. Your lives are worth more than your pride." The display showed human rescue ships approaching the destroyer, ignoring the danger to their own crews. The Crixan captain's response when it came was barely a whisper. "We accept your assistance." That single act of mercy, Vex mused, broke 5 millennia of Imperial military tradition. The rest of the battle played out like a cascade failure. More Crixan ships began standing down, their crews moved by the humanity of their supposed enemies. The mighty Imperial fleet, undefeated in 1,000 conflicts, was brought low not by superior firepower, but by compassion. The final casualty count, Rax said, bringing up the statistics, was remarkably low. They could have destroyed us completely. Instead, they chose to save as many lives as possible. Grand Admiral Zix's final transmission to High Command, Vex added, said it all. The hologram showed the Grand Admiral's message. They have defeated not just our fleet, but our understanding of warfare itself. They fight not to destroy, but to preserve. Not for glory, but for life. We have much to learn from them. Rax shut down the tactical display, leaving them in contemplative darkness. The Academy students always ask why we didn't continue the war. We had other fleets, other resources. "Because," Vex answered, "for the first time in our history, we encountered a species that made us question not just our tactics, but our very purpose. They showed us a better way to be strong." And that, Rax concluded, was just the beginning of their surprises. The room's lighting gradually returned to normal, but both commanders remained silent for a moment, lost in their memories of the battle that had changed not just the course of the war, but the very nature of their civilization. "Shall we continue with what happened next?" Vex asked, knowing the even more remarkable events that followed. "Yes," Rax nodded. "The students need to understand how this defeat led to our greatest victory, the day we learned what it truly meant to be warriors." The holographic display shifted to another critical date, December 12th, 2159. The Crixan colony world of Nova Crix blazed on the screen, its atmosphere turned violet by intense solar radiation. "The Great Flash," Vex said, his voice heavy. "Our scientists had missed the warning signs. A nearby star was about to go supernova, and our largest colony world lay directly in its path." 3 million colonists, Rax added. "No time for evacuation. Our ships were too far away, still regrouping after the war. The Council had already composed the official morning declaration." The hologram showed the massive stellar explosion, its deadly radiation wave racing toward Nova Crix at near light speed. Then, something unexpected appeared. A fleet of human ships dropping out of hyperspace. "Commander Jessica Chen," Vex spoke the name with reverence. She diverted her entire fleet without waiting for authorization. 30 ships, 10,000 human lives, positioning themselves between our colony and certain death. The display showed the human vessels linking together, forming a massive energy shield array. Technology they had developed, but kept secret during the war, now deployed to save their former enemies. Their shield grid wouldn't last long against the radiation, Rax narrated, watching the scene unfold. But they didn't need long. Just enough time for our colonists to reach the underground bunkers. The hologram played Commander Chen's transmission. "Crixan Colony, this is Commander Chen. We can hold back the worst of it. Get your people to safety, all of them. Today we're all one species." "The radiation started eating through their shields almost immediately," Vex continued. "They could have retreated, should have retreated, but not a single human ship broke formation." The scene showed the devastating toll. Human ships' hulls glowing red, then white-hot. Crew members suffering radiation exposure as their shields weakened. Yet they held position, protecting millions of Crixan lives. 7 hours, Rax said quietly. They held for 7 hours, lost 15 ships, 3,000 human lives, to save a colony of those who had been their enemies mere months before. The hologram showed the aftermath. The human fleet, battered but unbroken. Nova Crix, scorched but surviving. And the Crixan High Council, faced with an unprecedented situation. A debt of honor to a species they had tried to conquer. The debates in the council chamber lasted weeks, Vex recalled. Some argued we should ignore the sacrifice, that acknowledging it would show weakness. Then Fleet Admiral Kane brought Commander Chen before the council. The recording showed the human commander, her face bearing radiation burns, standing proud before the Crixan leaders. She spoke just one sentence. "We protect our own, and after today, that includes you." The council chambers erupted in chaos, Rax said. 10,000 years of Crixan tradition challenged by a single human sentence. The old guard versus the new thinking. Those who clung to pride against those who recognized true strength. And in the end, Vex added, we learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the willingness to preserve. The final images showed the aftermath. Crixan ships adopting human shield technology, joint defense platforms being constructed, and the first drafts of what would become the Protection Accord. Commander Chen never recovered from her radiation exposure, Rax noted solemnly. She died 3 years later. Her funeral was attended by every member of the Crixan High Council. "And now every Crixan warrior takes the Chen Oath," Vex said, "to protect life, regardless of origin, to value preservation over destruction, to remember that true strength lies in sacrifice." The hologram faded, leaving them in contemplative silence. The weight of that sacrifice and the profound change it brought to Crixan society still resonated years later. But even then, Rax said, bringing up the next timestamp, we didn't realize that an even greater threat was looming, one that would test our new alliance in ways we never imagined. The holographic display flickered to life once more, showing a date that made both commanders' scales pale. March 7th, 2160, the first detection of the Void Swarm. "We thought we knew terror," Vex said, watching the initial sensor readings. We thought we understood war. We were wrong on both counts. The display showed something that defied conventional physics, a mass of living darkness, consuming light and matter alike. The first Crixan Deep Space Research Station vanished in seconds, its death cry barely reaching the nearest monitoring post. Our response was predictably arrogant, Rax noted, his voice tinged with bitterness. The mighty Crixan Empire would handle this threat alone. We had our pride to restore, after all. The hologram displayed the first Imperial response fleet, 300 ships against what they thought was simply another spatial anomaly. The footage lasted exactly 27 seconds before all contact was lost. The humans knew what it was, Vex said. They'd detected similar entities decades ago but had kept their distance, studying, preparing. While we conquered, they learned. Admiral Jason Pierce's transmission cut through the room. Crixan High Command, we've faced these entities before. They're drawn to advanced technology, especially weapons. Your entire battle doctrine is like a dinner bell to them. Let us help you. We know how to fight them. The Council nearly choked on their pride, Rax remembered, watching the recorded debates. Accept help from a species we had tried to subjugate? Let them protect us? Unthinkable. The display showed the cost of that pride. 3 more fleets lost, 2 colony worlds evacuated, and the Void Swarm growing stronger with each victory. Every destroyed ship, every piece of advanced technology, only made them more powerful. Then Commander Linda Torres changed everything, Vex said, bringing up the footage from the Battle of Proxima Beta. The hologram showed a human fleet arriving at the besieged Crixan colony, but instead of advanced weapons, their ships carried something else. Massive electromagnetic pulse generators, synchronized to specific frequencies. She brought her ships in running dark, Rax narrated. Minimal power, no weapons charged. The Void Swarm ignored them completely. Then she gave that famous order. Torres's voice rang through the room. All ships, initiate Protocol Firefly. Light up these bastards like a Christmas tree. The synchronized EMP burst lit up space itself, revealing the true form of the Void Swarm. Organic machines, ancient beyond comprehension, drawn to the energy signatures of advanced civilizations. One human commander, Vex mused, accomplished more in 5 minutes than our entire fleet had in months. Because she understood something we had forgotten. Sometimes the best way to win is to not play by your enemy's rules. The recording showed the aftermath, the Void Swarm retreating, confused by the unexpected attack. And more importantly, it showed the first joint operation between human and Crixan forces, coordinating their efforts using human tactics and Crixan technology. The council chambers nearly erupted in civil war, Rax said. The conservatives wanted to maintain our independence at any cost. The progressives saw the truth. Survival required change. And then Captain Jack Morrison made that speech, Vex added, queuing up the recording. Morrison stood before the Crixan High Council, his uniform bearing both human and Crixan insignias. Pride is worthless if you're not alive to feel it. We're offering our help not because you're weak, but because together we're strong. The universe doesn't care about our past conflicts. It only cares if we're smart enough to survive. The hologram showed the final vote, the Crixan Empire, for the first time in its history, formally requesting alliance with another species, not as conquerors or conquered, but as equals. And that, Rax said, shutting down the display, was when we truly began to understand. The humans weren't just teaching us how to fight the Void Swarm, they were teaching us how to be better. The real war, Vex added, was only beginning, but for the first time we faced it not with pride, but with wisdom. Rax gestured to a wall display showing the current Joint Defense Force emblem, a human hand and Crixan claw clasped together against a backdrop of stars. The day we unveiled this symbol, Rax said, half the old guard nearly had heart attacks. The other half had already started wearing it in secret. The hologram activated, showing the first graduation ceremony of the Joint Defense Academy. Human and Crixan cadets stood side by side, their uniforms bearing the new combined insignia. "Remember the first training sessions?" Vex chuckled. "Crixan instructors teaching ancient battle formations, while human sergeants introduced the concept of Netflix and chill." "The culture shock went both ways," Rax added. "Humans learning our ritual combat dances, Crixan warriors discovering pizza and video games. Who would have thought our fiercest warriors would become obsessed with something called Mario Kart?" The display showed various scenes of integration. Crixan engineers working alongside human scientists, modifying their weapons to be less detectable to the Void Swarm. Human tactical officers teaching Crixan commanders the art of unconventional warfare. The turning point, Vex noted, was when Commander Sarah Chen, Jessica's daughter, introduced the concept of joint crew ships. The hologram displayed the UES Unity, the first vessel staffed by both species, its Crixan weapon systems paired with human stealth technology, creating something entirely new. "Breaking 1,000 years of tradition," Rax mused, watching the ship's first launch, and all it took was one human child asking, "Why do we have to serve on separate ships when we're all family now?" The scene shifted through various milestones. The first Crixan-human marriage, the establishment of cultural exchange centers, the modification of Imperial battle doctrine to incorporate human adaptability. "Our ancestors would never believe it," Vex said, gesturing to a group of cadets passing by outside, humans and Crixans chatting, laughing, completely at ease with each other. The mighty Crixan Empire, learning the power of friendship from a species that still finds cat videos entertaining. "And becoming stronger for it," Rax added. "The Void Swarm never expected to face an enemy that could adapt, that could change its entire culture and military doctrine overnight." The final image showed the current state of their partnership, a massive joint fleet, protecting both Earth and Crixan space. Ships crewed by both species, using tactics that combined the best of both civilizations. "From enemies to family," Vex said quietly, "all because they chose to save us rather than destroy us." "And that," Rax concluded, "is why we now stand as their guardians. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Because they taught us that true strength lies not in standing alone, but in standing together." Commander Rax Thorn turned back to the observation window, Earth's blue glow reflecting off his scales. The same view that had started their conversation now held new meaning. "You know what the humans say about us now?" he asked Admiral Vex. "They call us their guardian angels. Us, the same species that once came to conquer them." "The greatest irony," Vex replied, watching a mixed patrol of human and Crixan ships glide past, "is that we're more powerful now than we ever were as conquerors." The Earth rotated slowly below them, peaceful under their protection. Somewhere down there, children were learning a history that seemed impossible, how their fiercest enemies became their most dedicated protectors. "The Academy graduates ask me sometimes," Rax said, "if I regret our defeat. I tell them it wasn't a defeat at all, it was an education." "The humans have a saying," Vex added, his aged scales gleaming in the starlight. "The best kind of pride is the pride you feel in serving others." Commander Rax straightened his uniform, bearing both human and Crixan insignias. "We came to teach them fear," he said. "Instead, they taught us love. And that, old friend, was the greatest victory of all." As if to punctuate his words, a brilliant sunrise crept over Earth's horizon, bathing both commanders in golden light. The same light that had once illuminated their path to war now shone on their greatest achievement, a partnership that had made both species stronger than they had ever been alone.